There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. Whether or not there are 4 or 5 dimensions of space, or why is there something rather than nothing. These are just games. One must first answer. This is part 2 where we discuss the book The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. I highly suggest that you watch the first part of the video before watching this one. Deep emotions, just like masterpieces, have more meaning than what they just actually tell. Every emotion has its own universe, such as jealousy, ambition, selfishness, or generosity have their own universes. This is true for those unexplainable feelings such as the absurd. The absurd can smack everyone in the face at any time. But this unexplainability is also very interesting because it's probably true that we cannot know someone 100%. There will always be something unexplainable. But practically, we do get to know people on some level. We get to know them from their behavior, from their actions, from what they think and their path of life. The same way, you can get to know these unexplainable emotions by analyzing them and summing up their characteristics and outlining their universe. If I watch the same actor 100 times, I know nothing about his personal life. But when I watch him for the 101th time and I say that I know him better, that has some truth to it also. So this means that we can outline these weird emotions, but this also means that true understanding is impossible. The beginning of all big ideas are pathetic. Masterpieces often start on the side of the streets or in a corner of a restaurant. The same is true for the absurd. The absurd world is a place of misery and is a place of anxiety. If you ask someone what they're thinking about and they say nothing, they are probably lying. You know this especially when you're close to that person or you love them. You might even have said this to someone when someone came up to you and asked you what are you thinking about and you just said nothing. But if he's telling the truth, if he's actually thinking about nothing, if it reflects his state of mind, when emptiness is trying to talk, when the chain of usual actions are broken, that is the first sign of the absurd. Sometimes the decor falls down. Wake up, take the bus, work for hours, eat, sleep, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, in the same rhythm. Usually people can put up with this with ease. But all of a sudden emerges the question why.
And his great-grandpa was Thomas Griffin, a great philosopher.
Thomas, would you please go look for a job?
Why?
And with this discouraged question starts everything. It begins with the feeling of hopelessness. It ends the cycle, but gives birth to self-awareness. It shakes us up and gives us 2 choices. Return to the chain, same unconscious rhythm, or definite awakening. And at the end of awakening, in time comes the consequences, suicide or recovery. During every day of life, time carries us, but a moment always comes when we have to carry it. Camus also says that we live in the future. We say tomorrow, later, when I get that job, when you grow up, but then we reach 30. He admits that he stands at a certain point on a curve, that he acknowledges having to travel to its end. He belongs to time, and by the horror that seizes him, he recognizes his worst enemy, tomorrow. He was longing for tomorrow, whereas everything in him ought to reject it. That revolt of the flesh is the absurd. In other words, the realization that our time is limited and we're going to die also fills us with this absurd feeling. And another thing that evokes the absurd is death. Camus says that it's always surprising that people live like they don't know about death. We can't experience it. And the fact that it's unexplainable and the fact that it's inevitable frightens us. And this is the absurdity of existence. and that also reveals our insignificance. But we're not interested in the absurd, but what effects it has. If one is assured of the absurdity of existence, what is one to conclude? How far is one to go to elude nothing? Is one to die voluntarily, or to hope in spite of everything? When thinking about things, we search for familiarities and clear things. The cat world is not the same as the ant world. The saying that all thought is human-like is just this: we cannot think otherwise. We like to put a label on everything to better understand it. Using symbols, we make the world easier to understand and we give it meaning. If man realized that a universe like him can love and suffer, he would be content. If we could explain the ever-changing world, and ourselves included, with a single principle, man would be jumping with immeasurable joy. We will always search for meaning and unity, but that doesn't mean that we will achieve it. We cannot truly understand everything. There's a difference between what we think we know and what we really know, practical assent and simulated ignorance. This is why we live with such ideas that when really thought about, make no sense. The Hungarian drama Az ember tragédiája, translated to English Human's Tragedy by Madách Imre, is basically about this idea that ideas and ideologies deteriorate and they fall apart. In short, the drama rewrites the biblical creation story and the Garden of Eden, and after eating from the fruit of knowledge, Lucifer shows Adam the whole history of mankind and from the past to the future. And when Adam sees that throughout history there is no true idea, from Egypt to London to the future that the author imagined, our ideologies and our ideas have crumbled and been rebuilt over and over. And at the end, Adam wants to end his life. If you guys want, I could make a whole separate video about Madách's drama, but let's get back to Camus. Okay, it's been about 24 hours, second day of recording, let's get back to the video. We cannot truly know ourselves, because about who or what can I say that I know that? I can feel my heart and I can say that it exists. I can touch the world and I can state that it exists, but our knowledge ends there. The rest is just guessing. For if I try to seize this self of which I am sure of who I am, if I try to define and summarize it, it is nothing but water slipping through my fingers. I can try to list the number of faces that I put on, emotions, nationality, what other people think, my identity, but you cannot add up faces. There is an uncrossable bridge between what I know is true and exists and the meaning that I'm trying to give those things. And then there are trees, and I know their hard surface, and I feel the taste of water. I know that these things exist, I feel them. Yet all the knowledge on earth will give me nothing to assure me that this world is mine. Scientists describe it and teach us to classify it, they enumerate its laws, and in my thirst of knowledge, I admit that they are true. They take apart its mechanism and my hope increases. At the final stage, you teach me that this wondrous universe can be reduced to the atom, and that the atom itself can be reduced to the electron. All this is good and I wait for you to continue, but you tell me of an invisible planetary system in which electrons gravitate around the nucleus. You explain this world to me with an image. Science has been reduced to poetry. I shall never know. So the science that was to teach me everything ends up in a hypothesis. Clarity gets lost in metaphor. The soft line of these heroes and the evening on this troubled heart teach me much more. I have returned to my beginning. I realize that through science I can seize phenomena and enumerate them, but I cannot apprehend the world. So in its own way, intelligence is also telling us that the world is absurd. But let's not get too far, because it's not that the world is absurd. This world in itself is not reasonable. That is all that can be said. But what is absurd is the confrontation of this irrational and the wild longing for clarity whose call echoes in the human heart. It's our longing for meaning and our inability to explain the world that is absurd. The absurd depends as much as on man as on the world. For the moment, it is all that links them together. Now, I need your help because I've read this part over and over, but I still don't quite understand what is being said here. Let us pause here. If I hold to be true that absurdity that determines my relationship with life, if I become thoroughly and imbued with that sentiment that seizes me in face of the world's scenes, with that lucidity imposed on me by the pursuit of a science, I must sacrifice everything to these certainties, and I must see them squarely to be able to maintain them. Above all, I must adapt my behavior to them and pursue them in all their consequences. I am speaking here of decency, but I want to know beforehand if thought can live in those deserts. So please leave a comment what you think is being said here. I would appreciate it a lot. So we have stated so far that the world is full of contradictions and it's irrational, and putting our label on them doesn't help us apprehend it better. Camus writes in his book, "I want everything to be explained to me or nothing, and the reason is impotent when it hears this cry from the heart. The mind, aroused by this insistence, seeks and finds nothing but contradictions and nonsense. What I fail to understand is nonsense. The world is peopled with such irrationals. The world itself, whose single meaning I do not understand, is but a vast irrational. If one could only say just once, 'This is clear,' all would be saved. But these men vie with one another in proclaiming that nothing is clear, all is chaos, that all man has is his lucidity and his definite knowledge of the walls surrounding him." Camus listed a couple of philosophers who all think that nothing is clear and all is chaos, that all that man has is his perspicacity and the knowledge of the walls that surround him. The mind, when it reaches his limits, must make a judgment and choose a conclusion. This is where ending one's own life and reply stands. When man gets to this point, he finds himself face to face with the irrational. He feels within himself this desire for happiness and truth, but to all this, the world responds with silence. And from this contradiction, the absurd is born. This was the second chapter of the book called The Absurd Walls. In the next episode, we'll continue to discuss the philosophy of Albert Camus. It will be in the link in the description below. There will also be a Discord server in the description that I just started. I welcome you there with joy, and thank you for watching. If you want more of these videos, I would highly appreciate if you subscribe.